Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fialkatadix 2021. We want to thank Rob Grant and his amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Thank you so much, Rob Grant.
Shared effort. Thank you. Take care.
All right. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here with Oren Goldenberg. Is that the correct way to pronounce it?
Nailed it.
And Oren, where are you calling from?
I'm calling from a parking lot outside the Arboretum in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Hallelujah. I love that town.
Me
So this is InnerViews number 6. The first question, Oren, is what's the best thing for a human being?
Other people.
Oh, man. You started off right. There's no right or wrong answers to any of these questions, but that one you got right. So you're on a roll,
I'm out.
dude.
Thanks for having me, Jerry.
I'm out. No, dude, I'll tell you, the person I got that question from studied with Wilhelm Reich, and that is the correct answer to the originator of that question in that context. So it is pretty amazing. What's your favorite form of information, or in how it comes into you?
I think conversation. I learned the best from, like I got through university without doing much studying, but I went to every class.
Yeah.
That's where I intake the most. These days, I really have been enjoying reading, though.
Great,
but
because
I think I retain information as well.
Well, we call that direct experience, but reading's interesting. Did you get reading from your parents telling you to read? They were an example, or on your own?
No, I really struggled with reading through school. And then once I graduated from college and I didn't have to read and wasn't expected to get through anything, I started really to love it and can do it on my own pace. And it's something, I would say probably, trying to impress a girl was what really got me into it. She was very literate.
That's very good. I like that. Why do you think humans collect or gather information?
I think I've been thinking, I recently adopted a dog who's in the car with me. She might wake up at some point. And I'm amazed at how much is transferred through DNA, right? Like, I didn't teach her to hunt. I didn't teach her to dig. I didn't teach her most things, but she has an innate knowledge that's passed down. So I I've bought into the whole that we're passing things through DNA, right?
Yeah.
But second to that, text, and whether that's video or film or written language, oral language, that's how we pass on information. That's how we're improving things. I talk a lot. I'm very Jewish, and I've dedicated a big chunk of the last 13 years of my life to the last synagogue in the city of Detroit, which is the downtown synagogue. And by the way, I'm in Ann Arbor, but I reside in Detroit. And, I think there's an incredible, we refine things through passing it on, right? I don't think we get to things we reach next levels of human intellect or of social connection or whatever you want to describe the human experience, technology, evolution, whatever. We don't get there without previous text, previous knowledge. And I think that's really the most important thing, is that's how we build our contemporary society. That's how we build a future. That's how we improve. It's how we maintain rituals, and rituals that aren't necessarily common practice today can be refined from old rituals. And I really think I talk about Jewish death rituals a lot because I find them to be on the nose, for lack of a better term. And I think, especially in crisis, having a canon to fall back on that has been tried and true and refined for millennia, helps us in times of great grief or distress, or.
That's good. Yeah, but you sort of implied it, but do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate in humans or more invented?
Does it matter?
Good answer. Do thoughts create emotions?
Yeah.
Is thinking more innate or more invented?
I don't know.
That's
This
all right.
is beyond my scope of knowledge.
Yeah, look,
Or-
and then another thing is some of these first initial questions are either or, and the two choices I give aren't necessarily the ones that you might agree with. You can go off, but it's also, if I ask you a question, it sounds like neuroscientist kind of thing. It's your hunch I'm after, like more just what you feel, that
Yeah.
your impulse,
I think again, I feel it doesn't really matter.
No,
Yeah.
that's a good answer. But let's stay on thinking for a second.
Okay.
I don't know what I think until I fill in the blank.
Say it one more time.
I don't know what I think until I
Thought it?
until you thought it. Yeah. Can humans think without language?
Yes.
Yeah. So Chomsky wrote an interesting thing. He said that a language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. Oren, how do you cope when language breaks down? When language doesn't work, what do you do?
I think touch is a very powerful language. I think silence and, presence, just presence is a important language. And then time.
Yeah. Well, you touched on a lot there. We'll get into that. Your general observations of humans in your lifetime, are they more thinking beings or more feeling beings? Just in general.
I think it depends on the person.
Yeah,
I think we do both. And I think we can't do one without the other as much as we think we might be able to.
totally true. We invented the words, but you can't really separate them.
No, not at all.
Alan Turing came up with these two questions in 1950. Is thinking a function of the soul?
I mean, I think it's that same connectedness. Like, are we separating the soul from our mind or intellect? I don't believe we do.
You
I think we
can't.
do anatomically or spiritual, but I don't. So yes, of course, the soul is involved. It's involved.
Cool. It's involved in everything. Yeah. Can machines think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. If you're looking at they can process information way better than we can because they don't have emotion involved, right? Like if you're talking about it as an individual thing and separate from a soul or separate from emotion, then like removing emotion is probably going to lead to a better processing of information. Definitely data. Machines don't get distracted.
Yeah. That Herzog doc was sort of interesting, trying to rationale electric cars, saying, your grandmother and your mom and dad say, now drive careful when you go out in the snowy ice. And then you crash the car and they go, well, I told you to drive careful. And you try to process this. I've got to drive careful. Once the electric car makes one mistake, it goes into every other electric car from that point on, that piece of information. So it sounds good, but it's like your grandparents and parents telling you didn't necessarily tell every driver in the universe, drive careful, it's slippery out there. Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
For me, they're interconnected.
Yeah.
Very much so. I was hanging out with the artist Levon Milross Stargazer. I don't know if
Yeah.
you're here yesterday, and he told me I was emanating purple from my throat chakra. I don't know. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Can I swear? Is that okay, Jerry?
No, that's all right, totally.
What does that mean? And he's like, it means you like use your thought. Like you're not emotion. Like you don't get pulled by your emotion. You're dominant in your head and your thinking. And I think deriving meaning, you know, for me adds an intellectual happiness that maybe like a hedonistic experience doesn't as much. I find so for me personally, there's a lot of headiness in how I enjoy the world.
Yeah. Just a couple more of these. Again, it doesn't necessarily I give it, but the options is, does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're sort of detecting it, or are we creating it?
I don't think we're creating it because we can't uncreate it,
Nice.
you know, because there's many times I would prefer just to float through the universe
Yeah.
to, you know, go through the torment of consciousness.
Dude,
And maybe
that's a
Buddhist philosophy, you know, they believe, you know, there's definitely religious beliefs that thinks you can, uh, you know, elevate beyond consciousness. But
yeah. Well, that's interesting. Also, breatharians think you can live without eating, just live on breath. It's like, good luck. I don't know how long that can last.
well, I look at their following.
What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
I've never measured, but my guesses are probably the same.
Same. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
Everything. Mostly dreaming about the things I worry about.
Oh, that's good. Dreaming about the things you worry about. That's good.
Worst, man, you like spend all night living, you know, in a dream where you're dealing with the issues that you then have to wake up and deal with again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I've been fussing on that wording because someone said maybe change it to what do you think about when you go to bed at night, as opposed to saying what do you worry about. And they said no, leave worry.
For me, it's the same. Like, do people really not worry before they go to bed? Like, I've never really experienced, you know,
Yeah,
a great joy, you know, like a blissful happiness, or like, you know, especially if, like, I don't know, as an artist, I'm sure you have this too. If you have a great thought when you're in bed, you worry about getting up and writing it down, less forgetting it. So, like, it's this strange time that I will say I battle with. I have not figured out that time before I go to bed yet, before I sleep.
Oren, that's great. I worry about if the pen and paper are next to my bed so I can wake up and write the note down. And I'm this. Okay, you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. That's Audre Lorde. Yvonne Rainer responded, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
I don't know what I suggest for people, but I can say personally, I've been working a lot in finance and trying to finance ridiculous projects that aren't being created. Predominantly low income housing that is embedded in culture and provides public space. It doesn't happen in America. A lot of people want to revolutionize housing and you shouldn't own property. Like, there's a radical lens that you can think about dismantling capitalist structures and whatnot. I think we just alter variables in the equation, you know. I really look at it as like, for me, it's less about dismantlement and more about tweaking, because just a slight change in a variable will lead to a very different product.
That is a great verb. I love tweak, and that's a great. It's almost like I might as well interject this now. What do you lean towards more for a company like Facebook? Okay, I lost your picture there for a second. Um, whoops, can you see me? Oh, good. Oh, there you are.
Sorry.
That's all
What do
right.
I lean more?
In regards to a company like Facebook, self-regulate, government regulate, or user regulate?
Well, I think the most effective is user regulation, because we actually have the control. I think what's been interesting that's coming out is people admitting that they don't feel the control, that even if you hate Instagram, you're still logging in. Is that, you know, at the end of the day, I think all the onus is on us. I don't believe corporation, if we believe that corporations are responsible for our behavior, that's a really dark play. It takes away all of our autonomy. And while I do think we need help to get off those platforms or create new platforms that are more rewarding, I don't think, in regards to Facebook, because it's like different from like energy regulation, right? Like, we use energy because it pops into our house. We're not the ones doing the mining or the nuclear activation, like it's being, but Facebook, it's all clear what we're experiencing, and we're choosing to go back onto it. And so I think it's you know it will never change if we don't change
Yeah.
the demand. We're continuing to demand it or buy into it. Why would Facebook change? Why would it be regulated? Why would we,
Yeah. It's a good point, Oren. Thank you. So McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we all know sort of what Facebook does to us and what was its intention as an invention, but there's other ways it's shaped our behavior that we're not so much aware of, just like cars. The hidden psychic effect of a car is it's enabled you to sit in a room where cars are driving by and we're not hearing those cars because you got the windows up, but the visual is heavy. So I'm seeing you in an amazing space. And that's sort of like a hidden psychic effect, like of a car. Like we used them as the first place to be able to have sex in the 60s. That's what a car was to me, a radio on wheels. So these are like the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So McLuhan's main probe was, well, why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects, even though we can turn to the artists, filmmakers to reveal them to us? What do you think? Why do humans still ignore them, even though we can get these hidden psychic effects revealed to us?
well, I think, and I think going back to your question about thinking and emotion, is just because we know something, that doesn't mean we can change it,
Yeah.
especially with human behavior and our own, most notably. you know I can know lots of things about myself, but that doesn't mean I'm able to change that behavior.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. Like, I think that knowledge does not equal reform or action or any, it's very much, you can have the information and not be able to use it. you know
Yeah.
Have you read the book Children of Time?
No, but tell me about it. What is it?
It's I'm terrible with authors' names, but
Oh, that's all right.
it's
But
a
just
it's a contemporary novel that takes place at the end of human civilization when human experiments have been shot out into the cosmos, like as a last chance. And there's one of the experiments that actually succeeded was the creating of a consciousness for what was meant to be monkeys that would evolve then into humans on this perfect planet, but instead evolved spiders to have this amazing consciousness. And the creation that changes their society is their ability to receive, it's literally an antenna. And it actually becomes the spiritual home of the community. And they're hearing all this information that's being shot down from a satellite, but that doesn't mean they can reach the satellite. That doesn't mean they necessarily know what the satellite is, or who's in the satellite, or where the satellite originated from. And it takes millennia for them to be able to communicate back and to actually realize that the satellite is not God, but at first they think it's God. So all I'm saying is, like, it's this beautiful development of like receiving, but receiving's never enough, you know.
wow. Receiving is not enough. That's good. Are you more afraid of old ideas or more afraid of new ideas?
What's the difference?
That's good. You're answering a question with a question. Oren, you win. That's what we're all about, inventing new metaphors, new questions. um, can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
When I was younger, I always thought it was of this bird in a cage at my mom's friend's house. It's so distant now, and I've started to like wonder if I have memories or if I saw photos,
Yeah.
because I
That's why
are
yeah,
visual.
that's why I use that word conjure. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. No, but I think if I dig that, I also think of like my 4th birthday party, but I know there was a photo of that, and that's why I'm remembering it.
Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Huh. Well, I think again, it's both.
Yeah.
Uh, I always say, like, thank God I smoke weed because my memory is very acute otherwise, and it sucks to remember everything.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a need necessarily.
Yep, that's right. James Joyce said it. Remember to forget. Tell me an early role model or someone who had an impact on you. It's two-part, within your immediate family and outside of your immediate family. Just briefly, and what was that particular impact or that influence?
I would have said my cousin earlier in my life, but now it's definitely my father. My father is an immigrant from Israel and just has this hardworking mentality, but so giving, you know, uh, that it, the amount of giving never equaled or was even compared to the amount of having. That's not the equation, right? And he always quoted his father that said, if someone comes and asks you for something, you give it to them because you know how hard it is for someone to come and ask. you know
Yeah.
so the older I get, the more I see like how much of the basis of the way I move through the world came from him. And also my mother is a social worker, so I think she it was as impactful, but I don't know. I don't want to make that absurd.
It's hard
But
to
then,
separate. That was good.
yeah,
Now, outside your immediate family, someone who had an impact on you, it doesn't have to be early, but whatever you want.
the most impact, my high school video teacher, Miss
Wow.
Gwen. Uh, she plucked me out of intro to video and sent me on a path and really empowered me at the age of 15 to start making video on my own, and gave me time within high school that by my senior year, I was doing an animation class. I was doing an independent study with her, and like, she gave me access to all this equipment that the school district owned that nobody knew how to use. And I literally learned how to use green screen and then trained the teachers how to use it. And then I was also an assistant to a film class, a video class. So like 3 periods of my senior year in high school, I was already doing video. And on top of it, I got a pass because I worked for the school district doing video. And I was able to leave school whenever I wanted. And like, I don't know, that was definitely the start to my career. She encouraged me to go to the University of Michigan. Really I was largely responsible for the course that was set for my life.
That was beautiful. And it really led into the next questions. But the first one in that regard is, McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. So knife and fork extends our teeth. The shutter in a camera extends our eyelid. What does the moving image camera, whether it's video or film, extend for you? What humanness is it extending?
Well, I think like the answer I should give is like empathy or experience. You know, I was always blown away that like, you know, by the age of 5, I thought I had an understanding of what Africa looked like. I mean, I'm still never been there. And like, you know, I have these images. So it extends like our connection to other societies, to other ideas, to other people. But really, probably I want to say light. I think video and film, LIGHT. It's an extension of light. Our ability to capture light. It's a medium of light. And whether you want to be metaphorical about it and like spiritual, that light is within all of us, or light is what created us. But those mediums are just light.
Yeah. No, it's really good you answered that, because light is within us. It's metaphorical, but it's also, the funny thing McLuhan said was, most people say the eye, it's evident, but that's just, there's no right or wrong answer. But he said, no, film extends the foot because you travel. So as soon as you said Africa, that was right in cahoots with that. Like, we're traveling. So tell me the route of your viewing stuff, your path. Are your parents taking you to DIA to see art films? Are you going to movie theaters growing up? Are you watching VHS or cable? What are you watching before she turned you on to filmmaking that made an impact on you? And then where did you go, well, I want to do that? Did it happen before her putting the tool in your hand? Were you seeing stuff growing up going, oh, how did they do that? I want to do that.
So as a child growing up in the 80s, I watched a lot of Simpsons and Power Ranger, you know, like whatever was on after school. Seinfeld, I didn't watch Seinfeld, Friends. Like I watched cable TV. We had cable. Yeah. My brother was obsessed. Saturday morning cartoons, you know, and then we started watching the video games we were playing and whatnot.
Yeah.
But when I was in high school, I got really into music videos. And that's what sort of I connected to and really was inspired by and wanting to make. I didn't actually get into viewing films from a critical lens, you know, until college in my intro to film class with Hugh Cohen, which was incredible. He's such a brilliant teacher in teaching one how to look at film critically and understand all the components that, you know, you find in it. I forget which of the theorists says, you know, film, I think it was Cavell probably, that film encapsulates every medium. I disagree, but you know, there's architecture, there's, you know, painting, there's color, there's all of these things. So I wasn't that took me till college, but I got into making video because my high school English teacher offered us the option to shoot, make a video about Harriet Tubman as opposed to writing a paper about it. And I just, did not want to write another paper. So I shot with a my parents' VHC, and spent way more time than I would have on a paper shooting this film, editing it VHS deck to VHS deck, and where you make one mistake, you got to go all the way back, and I'm not saying like with one of those controllers that you could do VHS that I found out existed later. This was like RCA cables between two VHSs. You got to pause because if you stop it, you're going to get a black frame, all of that stuff. And I was like, oh, this is fun. And like, I remember the first cut. I had a perfect cut between like the throwing of the rock that hit Harriet Tubman's head and seeing her fall. But I messed up, the edit. I had to go back and I never got it right again. But, that was the start. And that was really, I was like, oh, I should take video. After that, I was like, oh, I'm into video. This is really magical. And I loved it. And and I'll say this. I always wanted, I think I always felt some artisticness, whatever it was, like the desire to want to express things outside of sports. I was playing a lot of sports. And I have zero musical talent. And I have zero drawing. Drawing was hard. Painting was. I eventually learned how to do it through a teacher, but like none of it was natural to me. And when I made video, I felt I'm like, oh wow, this is a way without any of those skills I can create. And that's what really drew me to videos. I'm like, oh, I can have zero, innate, what were considered the arts, and still make things.
Yeah. Well, that was good because I send out kudos to Hugh Cohen too, because when I studied at University of Michigan, before there was even a film department at all, that's who I studied film with. So that was a good summary of that. So you were raised Jewish. Are you practicing, or are you cultural, or how do you define yourself now?
I don't feel a need to define myself.
Good.
In terms of my Jew. I can tell you what I do. I'm on the board for my 13th year of the downtown synagogue. When I moved to Detroit, I was like, I'm going to be very far away from the Metro Detroit Jewish community because it wasn't my bag. But then, I was living with some Jews and they were radical and we were radical and we're not trying to be Jewish, but we just started wanting to be like, oh, let's do a Purim party. Why not? No one's making us. Let's do it. It's fun. Yeah. And I got involved with this synagogue and, we were a lay-led synagogue for a long time. So I started leading services. I would have friends when their parents passed who asked me to lead Shiva service.
Beautiful.
And I sort of did not choose, but sort of grew into this, leader of ritual in the Jewish community. And I think it was good for me and good for my peers because I believe in a halachic Judaism, right? Like there's the Bible, and then there's all these interpretations, right? Everything we practice, like not driving a car on Shabbos. God didn't say that. No one thinks God said that. A rabbi said that. A rabbi interpreted not working and electricity to be not part of that. Electricity was work, or why? Because there's fire involved, or there's a spark, and making a fire used to be really hard work. So like we don't do it, or like all of these things. So I'm like, that's not a rule, that's a practice. So what are our practices and what are our new practices? How are we, creating new rituals or doing things that inspire us where we are, especially place-based rituals of Judaism. And then I would say, in my friends losing parents, I saw how much they were either being comforted by or completely missing the Jewish ritual of death in death. And I started thinking of how I could extend those to the community in Detroit in regards to, for lack of a better word, I call it spatial transformation. A lot of people will call it gentrification, but I think gentrification is a loaded term. But spatial transformation is inevitable. And I didn't find rituals for this, or, you know, in cities we'll have like a press conference or a groundbreaking, or like people would go and take a brick from a demolition site, but these weren't considered rituals even. They were just, I don't know what they are. And so then my Judaism extended out through my art and trying to think of what was comforting me and creating catharsis for me and how we could use art, because I really think the important and historic role of art is catharsis and ritual. You know, the commodification of art is a very new thing, but we've been using art forever in communities. So that's sort of how I started thinking about it and how my Judaism extended. You know, I stay connected to Judaism in two ways. One, because my family practices, so we'll do Shabbat dinner. You know, my brother has young children, so we teach them the rituals, and it's really lovely. But then my involvement in the synagogue has led me to keep going to synagogue, which is not something I would be doing otherwise. But when I go, like, especially what we've been doing in Detroit with the downtown synagogue, we started about 5 years ago holding our high holiday services in the old Temple Bethel, which is this Albert Kahn designed synagogue that was left by the Jewish community in 1972, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's this domed mosaic. It's just an incredible place to be and to go for Yom Kippur services. And I walk from my home through from the Cass Corridor through New Center up through, the north end to this synagogue. And then I'm in this like amazing space, and then I practice forgiveness.
Wow.
Which is probably, missing most from society right now, in my perspective.
Definitely.
And so I found it, particularly this year, to be very powerful, and for me personally, to go through the liturgy and the practice of forgiveness.
Dude, let's stay on that for 1 second, because I think I heard you got beat up by the cops protesting about a year ago. Is that true? And so Frank Zappa has a great line. You got to love the cops as they beat the shit out of you on the street. How did you process that word forgiveness with the guys who beat you up or whatever they did to you?
It's kind of twofold, because I think when I'm nervous or scared, I talk a lot. Like, I just start rolling. But I talk to them. I spent the time, and I was also arrested at the 2004 Republican National Convention, which inspired my film Finding the Third Circle, or changed my film Finding.
Yeah.
And you talk to your arresting officer. And when they say things to you, when they were saying things to me like, y'all were destroying property downtown, I'm like, first of all, we weren't. But second of all, even if we were, it's property. You just beat my fucking face in. Like, do you not feel that humans are not more valuable than property, or that we, you literally talk to them?
Yeah. Beautiful.
And personally, like, I'll march, and especially if young people are marching, like, yeah, you go and support young people. But I am very against ideas like ACAB.
Yeah.
because I don't think all anything is anything.
Yeah.
And we don't give a path forward into love for people who are either abusing authority or are in positions of authority. They're never gonna go that way. So
Really well put, Oren. Do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I'm trying to remember. I was having profound thoughts about evil, and I can't remember them. This is like a few years ago. I remember being like, wow, evil. Do I believe it? And I really don't remember. I don't think about that very often. I think people have trauma, and trauma is very difficult. It's very difficult to heal. It's very difficult to parse out of people's actions. Um, you know, if we, I think my thoughts had to do with this notion that if we believe that there's some like great love, then there has to be this great evil. Like if love is a force in the universe, obviously there's evil too, because we don't live in love. We're not practicing love all the time. We're not, the universe doesn't love up all the planets. So if they're, oh, right. I was talking with my friend Billy Mark, who's an incredible artist and deep in liturgy. And we were talking about love. We talk a lot about love. And for me, it was very much that's the question.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that evil is what affects people's actions. I think it's trauma.
Yeah. Well put, Oren. Its sort of follow up is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? This one I'm going to set up with a few modern thinkers' thoughts. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola, Detroit born, and he stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. The basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Well, I think there's a lot. I definitely think there's a lot of truth to that, because I guess in my experience, and I don't really know what an enemy is, I know what bullying is. Whether it's with, lethal force or with words or whatever, and something I've experienced my whole life, right? Like, that's, yeah. Bullying is, if you don't respond, they stop bullying, right? Because there's no reciprocation. If there's no back and forth, it's not fun. There's no empowerment. They don't get empowered by it. I think we're at a time where you don't necessarily have, if you don't acknowledge your bully, that's not enough, because other people will. And there's this time of collective bullying, and if they're in power, even if I don't respond to it, other people might respond to it, because if it's being done in a public space and they are creating that life force, it's bonding through bullying. So if everyone ignores it, then I think it's a great way to disempower a bully. But now I don't think we're in a place where just your own distance from it is enough.
Yeah. Very good. So James Joyce said he was the first projectionist in Dublin 100 years ago at his cinema, Volta Cinema. He says, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Oren, why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
I'll say this. I spent 4 years making Our School, a documentary about Detroit public schools.
Yeah.
I was like, why didn't I fucking become a teacher? I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that. I think the answer probably has to lie somewhere between that movies and film and video games and whatever we're talking about as contemporary experiential mediums are connecting to what I was describing earlier as these rituals, rituals of within communities and catharsis. I know now the predominant moving images that I view are what I would call well produced but low in intellect movies and TV shows.
Yeah.
Because at the end of my day, I'm having trouble disconnecting from what keeps me up and the worry and all of those things. And I find it hard to read, because my mind is active when I'm reading. It's got to imagine the world. But when I'm just being blasted in the face with visual, oral stimuli, I lose that active thinking. And I think that's a great catharsis. I don't know if it's a good one or a healthy one or one I want to prescribe to other people, but it's definitely what's going on with me now. In the past, I used to go and watch stuff because I wanted to increase my intellect and increase my experience. Like one of the reasons why I love Frederick Weissman is because whether it's accurate in the end, the notion wow, now I know what it's like to be in a school. I love high school. Now I know what it's like to be a ballet dancer. Now it's I'm not saying I actually do, but that's I think a piece behind why I used to look at stuff. Now I look at stuff for different reasons. So I don't think it's that I don't equate the two. Watching something is the same as being with something. They're tapping into different things, but that's all I
No,
got on that.
you said it well, because the poet Auden said, the mystery of art is we don't know if it activates or pacifies us. So again, that's putting a load on those two words, activating and pacifying. Bertolt Brecht says, oh, I don't want art that puts me in a trance. Some art that puts you in a trance could eventually activate you. So we don't really know. We just invent these tools, and the Balinese say we have no word for art. We do everything as well as we can. but Warhol said, movies taught us everything. It taught us how to drive a car, how to kiss, how to eat, how to dress. That's why Reagan went into the White House when he got elected and said, where's the war room? And they said, there's no war room. That's in the Pentagon. And he goes, I saw it in Dr. Strangelove, which isn't, that off, because Kubrick's a detail freak, So, a screenwriting teacher there at University of Michigan, in fact, told me a great film is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art, great film is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
Well, for me, it's everything.
Yeah.
As the maker. Whether or not you're successful in achieving your intention is, the difficulty in the craft. Yeah. And then I really think something you got to let go of, because you don't have much control over it in the end, because people are coming with different experiences, and they're definitely not coming from a maker. They're not coming from the maker's mind. But I think of it as I like impressionist filmmaking, because I think the thought that the camera isn't there and there's not someone behind it and there's not a whole crew behind it is, it's a trick of the illusion. Filmmaking's an illusion. So I'm not saying it's bad that it's an illusion, but it is an illusion.
Yeah.
And in the work I've made, I generally like to reveal that and let it be known, because I think it can add less, it can remove some skepticism, right? If you show the hand, if you show the maker,
Yeah.
you're not wondering who made this, why they made, but it's like painting, impressionism's great, realism's great, fantastical surrealism is also great. They're
Yeah.
different, they're different, and they each have their place. I don't know if you want me to go into it, but like the feature film I've been making the last 7 years, it's all, it's basically a found footage film where you always are, given information about who's holding the camera, whether or not I think people often forget about it, even though they know. And that's a whole nother thing.
Wow, who's holding the camera? That's beautiful. Well, yeah, the interesting thing is I'm curious your feelings. Do artists have a moral obligation? Do they have moral
No one
obligation?
has a no one has a moral obligation.
That's great. That's a heavy answer. I'm
Not
just
saying we don't create our own,
yeah.
but there's no who's obliging you.
Yeah. That's a really good answer. I've just started asking that, and people go, everyone has a moral obligation. And then some people know, like you watch Pasolini or someone, and they go, they didn't have a moral obligation in a way, but maybe they are, but they're expressing it not in the accepted societal norms of what's moral, you know.
Yeah, I don't think we have a great, especially today. I think we have a less of a grasp on morality than ever.
Yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
don't know, you just made me think. I was listening to Ezra Klein on my drive to Ann Arbor today,
Yeah.
and he was interviewing this guy who I think it's called whatever. In the interview, he posed this theoretical question of like, if there's 4 people in a house and there's that you can save from dying, or there's a house full of the best art in the world, which do you save?
Yeah.
And the question, is like, well, a lot of people say obviously the people, but then they posit is, but if you save the art, you could sell it for a lot of money and save way more than 4 people.
Right. Yeah.
So to me, these are great questions, but there's no answers to
Right.
you know,
Right.
questions.
Well, this is Peter Greenaway saying cinema is much too rich a medium to be left to storytellers. We've shared the experience of going to experimental film for years in Ann Arbor. Cinema is only 130 years old, and the festival's 60 years old. That's pretty amazing that festival's lasted half the history of the medium. And so are experimental filmmakers doing something completely different, or are they telling stories differently? Like Tony Conrad's The Flicker is just black and white frames flickering. Me and you could watch it and have a story go through our head, but it's not.
I love the film Wavelength.
Oh, yeah.
To me, what I love about that film is it's very experimental and it tells a story. The best part of that story is that you don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
No. And like the absence of knowledge is a story. And the way we fill in. And I love how in that film you forget, right? You dip down on the wavelength. It's like you forget that there's a body. Time passes, you forget, and like you hear, oh right, there's a fucking body in there. So I don't think they need to be separated. But again, like we were talking, they're different forms. I don't think any school owns a medium. Going back, it's light, man. No one owns the light.
That's good.
And I
So
love, like, the thing I got into, I don't make it, like, I don't think I make strictly experimental films. I don't think I make traditional like Hollywood narratives. I try to get somewhere in between because I find experimental films often very boring. Great place to take a nap.
yeah.
And that's, I know other people like will watch every flicker. And but I think using the medium within storytelling is important. Like I was telling you, like there's no reason we can't have more impressionism in filmmaking and see who's holding the camera and all of these things. Like we can take the avant-garde into this other realm of Hollywood narrative, because again, going back, you can change one variable. You don't have to change the whole the whole equation. It doesn't have to just be flickers, but you can have flickers within a movie, and it's going to do something that's unexpected and might change the way people are perceiving what they are perceiving.
Yeah. You helped change my life once at a lecture I gave in Ann Arbor. You said, Chris Marker fucked my shit up. I says, you couldn't have put it better, Oren. That's pretty good. So Michael Apted, another good filmmaker who just passed, you know, he made a documentary on a Russian rock star years ago when MTV was breaking, like 40 years ago. And I says, why do rock video editors feel so obliged to edit fast? And he said, because we've learned to take in information faster. And Marty Scorsese admitted then he was cutting his films faster because of MTV. Most people don't know Abel Gance invented rapid montage in 1922, but it didn't really hit us hard until MTV or that era. The flicker frame editing, the editing, rapid montage sped up. This question's asked with a bias. Can humans literally learn to take in information faster, or are we just brainwashed to believe we can?
You're in a realm of science that I don't understand, brain activity and neuroscience to that degree. I think we can take, like, I'll put it this way, like we were talking about initially, I take information very quickly when we're talking. If I have to read it, it's very slow. Yeah. I have to reread it. So, like, obviously we can take in information in different speed given what medium we're working on. Obviously within a medium, if you're presenting information quicker, it seems like we can take it in. You know, yeah. People aren't missing what's happening. We sped up the speed of cuts. It's not like people are like, what the fuck is going on? So obviously they were able to. But what I will note, I think is so fascinating right now and is really exciting to me, is the cuts are slowing down. Because we have these long forms all of a sudden, and you don't have to pack it in to 2 hours or 90 minutes. And Scorsese can make The Irishman, which is so long, that there's no reason to pull away as quick. So there's this great change happening in filmmaking and TV making right now, which is breadth. People are now, directors now, and he says it in the interview at the end of The Irishman, is that, you know, he really appreciated that, you know, he could premiere on Netflix because he didn't have to fit in a movie time frame.
That is brilliant. You really taught me something amazing there. I really needed to know that. Thank you so much, Oren. And so this just a follow-up.
If you watch, like, go watch contemporary shows, they're slow. Like, and not necessarily the whole time. They'll use cuts for energy, but then they'll be like this like slowness, and you're like, and I'm, as someone who was like trained, and when I'm working on, like, let's say people want to put stuff on the internet for their organization, I'm like, it should go be fast. There's 10 minutes is a long time now. Yeah. We can do it in 2. But that's why I'm so inspired by seeing these long, slow shots. And it's like, are we entering into third wave cinema in America? Like, finally, are we, do we need these mediums to actually slow us down as opposed to just be like rapid information centers? Because we're getting it online. Like, we're like the way we're taking in information in the scroll to me is insane. Like, one, because it's very fast, but two, it's not it has no linear connection. It's like you see tragedy in Afghanistan, followed by a meme about cats, followed by a hot picture, followed by, more Afghanistan. You know what I mean? Like, there's no curation or actual meaning behind the connection and the juxtaposition of images today that we're experiencing in mass. And so maybe television and films are giving us time and the space to not have that happen. Because the music video, fast cut, that's nonstop everywhere we look. Even billboards fucking change now,
But the hidden question was, can humans literally multitask?
I can't.
Yeah.
Whether other people can, like, I mean, I don't know if it's true or this is gendered or whatever, and I shouldn't say this, but women who I date seem to be able to be on their phone and have a conversation with me.
Yeah.
I can't. I literally cannot.
Yeah. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Both. The conviction to compromise. Like,
dude, that is an answer. Let me tell you who told me that. I quote that answer sometimes. An amazing human being, Walter Board, he started the first underground newspaper in America with Ishmael Reed. He said, the conviction to compromise. That's a good answer. This is George Manupelli said his mantra was ignore yourself. Jonas Mekas says there is no self-expression. Cecil Taylor, great jazz pianist, says, I'm just a vehicle and this stuff just comes through me. I know it's both and it depends, but what's your impulse or leaning? Is art making, filmmaking more self-expression or more you're a vehicle for whatever culture or technology is dominant?
So personally, I'm reflecting what's around me. I'm a vehicle because, and obviously I'm rendering it through a very particular thought process and experiential process. And I think especially, why, I feel in a unique position, within my life and within where I am in my community and whatnot. But I don't make films that aren't about what's around me. I've literally spent, the last 16 years making films just about Detroit.
Yeah. Can art making be egoless?
No. You can try, but that's like a whole nother part of the ego. I always say, like, there's no such thing as selflessness. Because even if you're giving charity or you're doing good for others, it's doing good for you. Like, that's what you want to be doing. That makes you feel good. That makes you get through with the world, so there's no selflessness. And I don't know if that's the ego, but
no, it's similar. It's very good what you said.
Like, it's the attempt to take ego out of your art is just fueling your ego.
Yeah.
That you've been able to take the ego out, right? It's like, look at all the people who are, I just feel their ego when I look at their work, and mine doesn't. I'm going to remove it.
It's really great, Oren. You're opening up. The whole purpose of these questions is to analyze the question. It's self-reflective thing, so I can continue to reword them or think about them. And I love it when most people go, can art making be egoless? And they will go, no. Once in a while, someone will go, yes, great art is egoless. But the way you put it is you sort of brought both of the elements in, that just the art of asking the question. It's sort of like this this line I always am struggling with. It's Leo Bersani's study of a symbolist poet called Mallarmé. He said, the very crises which threatens the writing of poetry sustains poetic composition. So it's almost like the very fact that you're trying to make art that's egoless sustains art composition or art making. You know, it's sort of like you're integrating the form and the content. You know, that's
Is why I love Marker,
yeah.
right? Like that's what I think is my takeaway from the work. That work is, it's like we're going to be conscious of that, that there's a viewer. We're going to be conscious that there's a maker. We're going to see how this plays against memory, because like I would like to go back to the beginning of our conversation, my memory is from photos. I know that. So if now I'm looking at a rapid succession of photos, obviously this is playing on my memory. So can the form act like memory? Can the form take into itself that, it's going to be intertwined with memory? Like nothing is in the vacuum. We're dealing with people, right? We're making art for people, and I mean, I make art for myself. Like, I'm not gonna lie about that. Everyone's like, where are you showing your film? I'm like, I could care the fuck less. Right now, I'm making and I want to make it. I've never gotten a distribution deal. No one's ever taken up my work and been like, the whole world needs this. I'm like, that's not my priority. My priority is to make, and that's okay. And Jerry, like, I've been working on this film that, like, it's a found footage science fiction film. Yeah. So it feels like could be a documentary or whatever. And I got it myself into the position because I wanted it to be, found footage, that I'm in it, because I wanted to shoot it. And I'm like, if I'm going to shoot it, what am I going to have someone talking behind me, playing the sim? And so I ended up having to be in my own movie, which I hate. but that, just the nature of where my thought making with filmmaking led me to was like, oh God, you have to subject yourself to what you subject other people to, which is acting, which is being on like preserved for eternity in this one form on a digital stick,
So I look forward to it. What is the title? Do you have a title, or do you tell a title of the film yet?
Yeah, the title is There Is No Detroit, Only Its People. And, it's also a working title. You never know.
Yeah, but that's beautiful. So you evoked Jay Rosenblatt when I asked him, how did Marker influence you? He goes, and specifically Sans Soleil, he says, I wanted to know how he made it. Like, he's like, I wanted to know the process. So it's like, you can't, like you said, you can't separate feelings from thinking, but we invented the words so we can separate them when we're using spoken word. So you can't.
Yeah, but languages, are attempt to not fail. Like, they're not perfect. We're constantly failing in language.
Yeah.
Imperfect. So yeah, we wanted to separate them. That doesn't mean we have.
Dude, that is a brilliant quote. Language is an attempt to not fail. But same with form and content. You can't separate form and content, but we think we can because we invented the words. And, McLuhan had a great one from T.S. Eliot. He says, It's the watchdog of your mind. It's when you're robbing your neighbor's house and the watchdog comes out, you just take a juicy steak and you give it to the dog and he runs off and then you can commit the crime. And so that's what the steak is, content. When you say to someone, did you see the new movie? And they go, yeah, how was it? They go, well, it was good or bad. They're talking about the content. They're not talking about the viewing experience. The viewing experience is like really important in making your aesthetic, a decision on whether a film was good or bad.
You're making me think of Capote. When I saw Capote
Yeah.
in theater, we were like, did you like that movie? I'm like, no, I fucking hated it. It was torture. It was such a horrible experience, but I'm like, it's a great film.
Yeah.
Like, it's a really good film.
Yeah.
Why would I enjoy watching that? Like,
right.
So like all filmmaking isn't meant to be enjoyable.
Exactly.
And whether or not things enjoyable doesn't mean whether it's good or bad, whether it's good, something can be really enjoyable and it's considered bad, like reality TV or something,
Totally. That's the question I skipped was McLuhan says there's no such thing as a good or bad movie. It's a good or bad viewing experience. And most people I interview like you go, nope, there's bad films. And that's fine. We form aesthetics. But that's
I went to one of my oldest friends, Michael Beauchamp, who I met at the New England Literature Program, which is this great program through U of M. The first time I met him, and I didn't like him for a long time because of this. And now he's one of my, best friends. But like, he goes to me, do you like bad movies? And I'm like, if I like them, they're not bad. He's like, and he kept pushing. He's like, well, what about like, stupid comedies? I'm like, if you liked it, there's no such thing as a bad movie that you like. Anyways.
It's called a guilty pleasure too. See, they have to label it like, oh, or it's like Tim Burton making a movie on the worst filmmaker ever in Hollywood, Ed Wood. I used to show Ed Wood films on campus and people would have a good time. But anyways, that's aesthetics. It does lead into this. You create what you resist. I'm not saying it's a true statement or not. It's just a statement that's come out, or it's what you resist persists. In fact, Bob Goldthwait, the comedian, morphed it into you are what you hate. And James Joyce said, it's a curious thing how your mind is super saturated with the religion in which you say you disbelieve. And of course, Louis Buñuel nailed it. He said, thank God I'm an atheist. But how do you react to this thought? You create what you resist. Not you, but one creates what one resists. What do you think of that thought?
I think it's very potent. And it's something I try to resist in my own work. And I'll give an example. Like in this film I'm making about, I don't know, in There Is No Detroit. I found myself writing these scenes about New Detroit that, had no positive. And it even makes me think about our school when the editor, Robert Hoffman, who I love, editor of Bad Santa and Ghost World, I showed him a copy and he's like, where's your bad guy? Who's evil in this? I go, Robert, in education, there isn't an evil character. Everyone's doing it for the kids. Whether or not you agree with the policy or it's good, no one's going around being evil. So the thought that we're going to create that trope because it's a movie, for me, I've resisted. And in my current film, it's like, how do I portray New Detroit, something that I think has had a really largely negative impact on the residents of the city, on the culture of the city, on the affordability of the city, like a lot of things. I know that not everyone hates it. Yeah. And I don't want to put out work that is just of my thinking.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm representing others. I'm not if it was a film, if I was making Tarnation, I'd put whatever the fuck I want in there. and not have another thought about it. I'm not, halfway through my movie, someone steals the camera from me and I'm not in the movie anymore. So like, what are these other perspectives? If we're trying to feign objectivity like Weissman, or, we are required to push back on what we're resisting, right? I want a world where everyone thinks Quicken Loans moving to the city is not great. Okay. But that's just not true. And I don't there are good parts to it. Like nothing is so total and complete. So within my art, I've been trying to push against it. And I think it makes harder art to make and less entertaining arts. Like it's less entertaining, it's harder to read, and it's more complex. But for me, I've always found that I'm trying to increase complexity through art, not reduce it.
Yeah.
And so much of film is about being able to digest something easily, right? Like we were talking before, just letting it wash over you, and that's where I bring an avant-garde aggression to my filmmaking.
That is good. Avant-garde aggression, because it is like agenda filmmaking. We know that. And it has
not agenda. Don't think of it as agenda.
No, I'm not saying yours is agenda. I'm saying there is agenda filmmaking, and then that's what you're doing different than that. And that's like
that activist filmmaking. Yeah. Well, there's activist filmmaking, which I find is very agenda heavy and usually bad. Yeah. Like it's just not good film.
Yeah.
And then there's Hollywood entertainment, which is objective, agenda based, and also like corrupting, our priorities, and a lot of times, separate people. But
totally, no, I understand.
I think of the reason I say aggressively avant-garde, I really consider the avant-garde to be what it means at the front line. You have to be aggressive if you're taking front and you're on the front lines. And I've come to terms with the fact that that's where I want I don't have a choice, but that's where I put my art. I don't reproduce. I don't have a studio practice. I don't make things that are consumable or reproducible or all these things. It's like art is meant, in my eyes, meant to be on the front lines pushing.
Really well put. And in that regard, you've been making your films for years. Tell me one major element that stayed the same and one major element that's changed.
I was thinking about the film I'm currently making, and there's a scene where the character is trying to figure out why everyone fucking stays in Detroit, right? It's dark, it's hard, like the answer is the people, but like he's trying to figure this out. And so he goes to the bar and he starts interviewing, the different people at the bar and asks them why they stay. It reminded me of the first video I made in Miss Ahern's class, which was a spoof sort of satire about this guy we were in school with who thought he was a ladies' man and like all this stuff, but really wasn't, like whatever. And there's a sequence where where the character is making a film, like goes around and interviews all the people about what's their best pickup line and what they want to see, what attracts them to other people. And I was just thinking about my Spanish teacher. I have my Spanish teacher, Señor Nicolaescu, going, "Oh, que es muy simpático y es muy inteligente, como el Señor Strauss," which is a friend of mine who's been in all my films. And I'm just like, holy shit, 23 years later, I'm using the same fucking technique, which is cutting in the middle of the film to just randomly asking people documentary style questions. So that was mind-blowing to me and kind of embarrassing, but I still use that technique apparently.
Is that Chronicles of Summer influence?
No, I've never even seen what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. But it's sort of that man on the street interview style. Joan Roos.
I mean, the thing is, by the time I was started making video in 1998, I had consumed so much media.
Yeah.
You know, there wasn't anything new, right? Like, in a certain way, like, you know, I'd seen interview style. I'm sure I saw something that cut to that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's like I came up with that,
Yeah.
but I find it funny. I find it very interesting, the because I wasn't conscious that this was something I've done before.
Exactly. So that's stayed the same. What's one major element that's changed?
Part of me wants to say nothing. Like, I just keep finding like similarities, you know, in the work I've made, or like the things that really inspired me as a young person. I see them coming out in my films still.
Yeah.
You know, like themes from Les Miserables, which was probably the greatest impact art, like piece of artwork that I consumed and reconsumed and still consume, and like all this stuff. And I would find these tropes that I could pull directly from there. What's changed? I think I've learned to have fun, and that the most important part of making work for me is that I and those involved have fun and have a good time, because we are blessed to be making movies. Like, there's no other job that is more desired, or like, you know, is more, like we were talking, it's more ridiculous. Like, go look at a fucking tree. No, we're gonna film a tree. Like, okay, like, we better have fun then, you know.
Oren, we got similar aspirations. My favorite kind of music is funk music, and funk is the key. Funky. The word's right in there. Fun
Yeah.
is the key. So we got about 10 more minutes. I really appreciate this. This has really been fun and enlightening. And so Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Tell me a weakness you've turned into a strength.
Wow. This is some therapy now. Weakness. I don't know how to answer that right now. I would really need to think about it, because one of my weaknesses is not really identifying my weaknesses.
Well, then your strength could be by putting that conundrum into filmmaking. That could be your strength.
I mean, yeah, I definitely think I work through things through my art. I guess I could say this, like, the things I lack, like in filmmaking, I don't think about sound. It's just like sound and music, and it's not there for me when I'm thinking of things, when I'm moving through processes. I need other people to bring that. And I have gotten, I think, very good at identifying what I don't do and bringing people in who that's what they do, you know, and not feeling like I need to do it, or I need to be able to do this thing, and just recognizing that's not what I do, and being able to say, okay, like, I don't care. And there's someone who does it, and there's someone who does it well. And that's who I should be finding. And that's who I should work with. And that's the process to make in filmmaking, because you need other people.
Yeah. Dude, that's delegating. That's totally what I've learned, especially working with younger people. Like when I find someone enthused, I'm like what Bob Dylan learned from the Bible. He says, "Don't ever tell anyone everything you know." And I find a young person that's enthused, and I'll tell them everything I know, and then I want them to do follow up. And about a third of them, a few percentage of them do the follow up. The other ones don't, and that's their choice. So it is finding a collaboration is such an important thing. Fill in the blank. Anger can be a productive emotion
When you don't take it out on other people.
Very good. Now,
And
one
I
of my
think it's one of the things that got me into art.
yeah. One of the things that really impressed me when I contacted you a few years ago, you said you were making fake Kickstarter videos. I goes, that is so cool. People take art too seriously. Now, this question's funny because it's can satire be destructive? Or, it's not quite worded right, but Swift compared satire to a mirror in which people could see every face but their own. Why satire? Why would you make fake um Kickstarter videos?
Many reasons. One, first and foremost, it was cathartic for me.
Yeah.
I was struggling and having experiences that I couldn't really manage. And the making of comedy and satire is what allowed me to persist in my craft, persist in my city, and to move through things. So first and foremost, like I said, I make shit for me. I'm not like I made satire because I needed satire. And when I was done needing satire, I realized I'm not making satire now. And I just stopped. I dropped the project after the second episode.
Yeah.
But I think satire at that time was largely important for me because we were encroaching on this completely surreal world that we live in now. And to me, it was a little, it was sort of tipping my hat towards what we were experiencing, which was just confusion, and a lack of discernment. And I think now, like a lot of, Bill Maher says it every week almost. He's like, when the article reads like an Onion headline, we have problems. And our headlines read like Onion headlines. Like, we are living in a world where it's hard to really like take seriously like and piece out what needs to be taken serious. Like, I just think for me at that time, it was leaning on this notion like everything's feeling fake anyways, so why feign that this is real with film? Why feign that this is an objective documentary? Like, no, it's subjective. You can never remove the artist from it. Like, so why are we putting this out there? So that was partially why I made it. I also thought, I looked historically, like Brewster Douglas, You're My Brother, my film about the Brewster Douglas housing, which was the first low-income housing in America, had a fake historical film in it. And I really started breaking away from the need to be truthful, because I didn't think we believe truth necessarily. We read it as truth. So I really played with, can I get people to think that my satire is true? Like, people thought it was a real Kickstarter. People didn't know it was satire. And to me, that at a certain point becomes the artistic statement rather than the product itself. I got as part of that project, Detroit Blank City, we did a fake news press conference about the emergency financial manager, where we announced that it was RoboCop. I like used all these logos to make it look like I used Devin Skillion, who's a good friend of mine, like a clip of him to introduce it, like, and I got it onto the news RSS feeds, and the news, like, it got sent out as press. Yeah. To me, that's the art at that point. It's not this amazing video. The fact that we were able to like get it into something that became the art. Yep. Because it's just so telling that either we're non-discerning, we don't like filter, or that anything is believable now. And I don't know.
No, that was good.
That's
Oren, it evoked a lot, especially the Latin word that means to make is factum. So fact and fake both come from the root word to make. And Louis, back to Louis Buñuel, he said it great. He said, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. How would you react to that?
That I love Buñuel. Yeah. Yeah. That's I just think that's very accurate. I think the push, the drive, the digging, like that's what attracts me to people, to art. And, you know, I think I met you at the 2006 Michigan Ann Arbor Film Festival when I showed Finding the Third Circle.
Yes.
It was my honor school. And I got a number of awards. Literally that, like, as I'm watching the film in the Michigan theater, I'm already like, oh God, I need to make the next thing. Like this is not like there's no those awards are fake. Like it's all in the process. Like I love filmmaking for the process. I love community work for the process. The product is great. The process, the relationships. Why do I do anything? It's for the relationships. And that's, yeah. So I concur, and yeah.
Totally cool, dude. I have a couple more. Can you go a couple 10 minutes more? Okay.
Only because I'm enjoying myself so much.
Oren, it's a pleasure, man. I'm enjoying myself, and more important, I'm learning a lot. Thank you. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
You're gonna grow.
Nice.
Don't worry.
How do you find peace of mind?
I would tell myself to, like, you know, chill. Have fun.
Have fun. How do you find peace of mind?
Nature.
Yeah.
Water. Swimming.
Nice. Tell me something good you never had and you never want.
Something good?
It's good, you never had it, but you never want it.
I think that's hard because I don't believe like the answer is coming to me.
Yeah.
So like I wanted to say like celebrity because I know enough of them and they all seem miserable.
Yeah.
But I can't say that, like, you know, when I put work out, I don't want to be celebrated. Yeah, part of me does, you know, like I don't know. Yeah. I don't actually like I know concretely celebrity is not for me. But I also know a lot of, like, you know, in my own world, like I'm known and I love it. So like I don't really know how to juggle that.
I'll tell you, it's good because you're talking, I think, about acknowledgement, and that's what all humans are walking down the street. They want to be acknowledged. But the answer I get the most on that question is fame, money, and heroin. And Mike Kelly, who you worked with, and I knew, interviewed him twice with all these questions, said, tell me something good you never had and you never want. And he said, children. Kids are good, never had it, never want it. It's very interesting.
Mike Kelly changed my whole relationship to art. Because when he passed, he was at the top of the art world. And I was like, oh, that's not something worth trying to attain. That won't bring happiness. That won't keep you in this world. You know?
Very complex. I've studied his suicide for years, and I've asked 5 really close people to him, and they've all given me different answers. Why did he do it? So we've talked about it in the past, and I'm just always impressed that you did work with him, and he is an important artist. But the passing part is my thing was You're too smart to commit suicide. Dude, get over it. And you know, that's an easy thing for me to say, but he was a very emotional thing. In the midst of one of my interviews with him, asking him these questions, he started to cry and he turned to me and he mocked his crying. He goes, "Boo-hoo, I'm crying." And everybody in the room like just chilled up. It's just like you could feel it was like chilling. So anyways, if you were in a vat of vomit up to your neck and someone threw a bag of shit at your face, what would you do?
Well, that's felt largely like my last year.
Sorry to laugh.
Well, no, it's fine. You're just touching on the metaphor I use, which is you're wading through shit. And you can either sink or you can keep wading.
Yeah.
Keep wading, you'll eventually find ground, right? So you don't, it's either sink or keep going.
Dude, that's beautiful. That's what Frank Zappa said. Don't stop and keep going. But I
have one of my favorite, Amy Fisher Smalls. She made a flag that I love, and it says, "The way out is through."
Yeah. Tell me her name again.
Amy Fisher or Amy Smalls or Amy Fisher Price.
Nice.
The fabric artist.
Yeah.
Really.
Very cool. So, Joseph Boyes, who's agitprop artist, said, "Make the secrets productive." Lou Welsh, beat poet, said, "Guard the secrets, constantly reveal them." But it was Thornton Wilder in 1928. He said, "Art is confession. Art is the secret told." But art is not only the desire to tell one's secret, it's the desire to tell it and hide it at the same time. Oren, you've laid your cards on the table for 90 minutes. I'm not implying you haven't answered this already. What's it really all about for you?
Me.
That is a good answer.
I mean, like I said, that's not my intention, but at the end of the day, that's what the driving force is. It's like, yeah. I want to expand, I want to challenge myself in these ideas and it's all for me, man. I love making films. I love talking to you, Jerry. Like, yeah, you asked me, but like, obviously there's a reason I'm doing it. And there's no one's holding a gun to my head to do anything. I'm a white, tall, middle-class person. Like I don't, I have all the privilege in the world. Anything I do is literally just because I want to.
Yeah. It's a beautiful answer. It's really amazing. I appreciate it. These are 5 short Alan Watts questions, just within 2 to 3 words. Who started it all?
Nobody.
Are we going to make it?
Yes.
Where do we put it?
Everywhere.
Who's cleaning it up?
All of us.
Is it serious?
Is it serious?
Yeah.
That is so good. Because I'm so serious. Like, I've always gotten that. I've always been this way. And I know the most important thing is to have fun while we're doing it.
Right.
Just because it's serious, it doesn't mean it shouldn't be fun.
Yeah. No, that was a good answer. Because, well, you got a question there, Rob? That was good because Frank Zappa says, "I'm serious about not being serious." I got 2 more after you. Rob, you got a question?
No, you go and then I'll ask my question.
No, I want you to go.
Okay. Well, so I'll be honest. I missed the entire conversation, but I know that you're in. I know that the OG is in film. So
Yeah.
in all your history with film, who's the greatest villain in cinematography and why?
Who's the greatest
You mean
villain?
you
Yeah.
mean villain in a film, in a movie? Who's the
In,
greatest?
in a film, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Good,
who's
good
the best?
question. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, we talked about villains for a while and how I don't.
Now that's ESP because I had no idea you did.
Yeah.
So anyways.
I don't really believe in villains. You know, there's people who have experienced trauma.
The Joker, right? The new one.
Yeah. The greatest villain. I don't know, man. Wow.
That's good. That's good to not know, because they'll tell you that Joker film is deep, but it's creepy. And that guy's a good filmmaker, but he calculated how to make a great film. And his NYU project was about um, the grossest punk rocker ever, Gigi Allen. So it was like, wait a minute. And he won't admit it. Anyways, that's a divert. That was a good
Yeah,
question.
I've ever had a villain in any of my films, other
Yeah.
than Time.
Time is a villain.
That's a villain.
Time will fuck you up.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
it escapes us.
here's the last two. Thank you, Rob. That was good. What is the healthiest cultural shift you see developing today, Oren? Like impactful shift in general society.
I think we're eating better food that's, better for us and better for the animals and the world. And I hope that persists. As someone who's kept kosher for a long time, it's amazing to see the kosher dietary ideas around, being humane towards animals and clean food and all these things really taking off. So I think that's really healthy.
Beautiful. And the last question, Oren, thank you so much. And thank you, Rob. What gives you the most optimism, Oren?
Young people.
Yeah.
They're awesome, man.
Yeah.
Just, they're open in a way I wish we were.
Yeah. That's
And they,
the
not of all their faults too, but like
Yeah.
when I look at them and I see the cosmopolitan nature, the diversity, the and just that energy. That's what's going to change the world. We're not.
Yeah. Well, we could keep trying. Like Sidney Lumet says, films can't do
Oh,
anything, but it ain't going to keep me from trying.
totally. But I also think one of our greatest tasks is to support them and not to feel apart, not to resist, and to uphold and to house young people and to support their craft. And going back to one of my films, a third of my film is shot by an 18-year-old who's the character that steals my camera in the movie. And you think, oh, I'm gonna film it, he's gonna stand by. I'm like, no, just give the kid the camera. Like, kids know, they're so cinematically versed these days that it's not like 20 years ago. Everyone's filming all the time. They know how to do stuff. We don't, I trained him on focus pulling and a couple of things and whatever, but rule of thirds, but they know that stuff. And so having faith in them, man.
Yeah, that's why we got Rob here. He's a youngin' and he wanted to get knee deep in the swamp muck of life, and now he's in the funky. He's in the fun is the key.
There's no easy way out.
Yeah.
Jerry, something amazing. McLuhan is, back on the tips of people's tongues.
Yeah.
And understanding how our internet has shaped us.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting as someone who's always brought, forcefully put him back into our dialogues, not me and you, but just the world. I think the time, those seeds are blooming now. And sort of the understanding of the importance of their work. So
Yep, it's just basically trying to promote understanding and positiveness in the big picture. And what you do in Detroit so well is the commonality in community. You find out what commonality you have and how you can become aware of what's going on.
thank you.
All right, Oren, thank you. Rob, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Rob. What a pleasure. This was super fun.
Thank you, Oren.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.